Have you ever wondered what really happens when an older man stops masturbating? It's not just about desire, it's about hormones, mood, and even your independence. Today, a urologist reveals what most men are never told about quitting masturbation after 60. At 74, he sat in front of me, his hands trembling slightly, not from illness, not from age, but from something much quieter. He looked me in the eye and said, "Doctor, I didn't know. I didn't know I was hurting myself." There was no shame in his voice, only confusion, like a man who had followed all the rules he was taught, only to realize no one had updated them for this stage of life. He was talking about masturbation, something he'd stopped doing years ago, not because he couldn't, but because he thought it was no longer appropriate. That maybe, at his age, it was time to let it go. But here's what no one tells you. Quitting masturbation in your 60s, 70s, or 80s isn't just a quiet choice. It can have consequences you may never have imagined. My name is Dr. Mohit Kara. I've spent over 3 decades helping older men protect their health, their dignity, and their connection to themselves. And today, I want to have a conversation most doctors avoid. Because what happens when an older man stops masturbating isn't just physical, it's emotional, hormonal, neurological. And if you don't understand what's at stake, you might slowly lose more than just desire. You might lose your confidence, your sleep, your vitality, even your sense of self. So in this video, I'll walk you through what really happens when men stop masturbating in their later years, and what that means for your body, your mind, and your quality of life. We're going to talk about everything from testosterone and prostate health to emotional regulation, stress, sleep, and memory. You'll see how something that seems simple, even optional, can quietly influence so many systems that keep you functioning and feeling like yourself. This isn't about shame. This isn't about guilt. It's about information. Because when you understand what's happening inside your body, you get to choose what's right for you. And if you've already stopped, that's okay. You're not broken. It's never too late to reconnect with yourself and rebuild what may have quietly faded. So if this topic already speaks to something inside you, type the number 1 in the comments below. If it doesn't, that's okay too, type 0. Your feedback helps me shape conversations that matter to men like you. And before we begin, I invite you to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, because every week we dive into real, honest health advice made for men over 60 men who deserve to stay strong, informed, and in control of their bodies and lives. Let's begin. Section 1. Testosterone, touch, and the quiet decline. One of the first and most overlooked changes when an older man stops masturbating is hormonal, specifically the slow drop in testosterone. Testosterone is not just about libido. It plays a major role in maintaining your energy, mood, bone density, muscle strength, even your clarity of thought. It's the hormone that gives you a sense of vitality, the feeling that you're still sharp, still grounded, still moving forward with purpose. And while testosterone naturally declines with age, consistent sexual stimulation, yes, even through masturbation, can help keep levels more stable than you think. You don't need constant activity, but you do need engagement. Without it, your brain receives fewer signals to produce the hormones that keep your system humming. That's where touch matters. When you stop touching yourself entirely, your body stops receiving that signal. Your brain begins to believe that sexual function is no longer needed, and it starts scaling things down. Slowly, yes, but steadily. Dopamine levels decline. Oxytocin, the chemical that makes you feel bonded and at ease, begins to fade. Even serotonin and melatonin, important for sleep, can be affected. This doesn't happen overnight, but it builds. Weeks turn into months. You start feeling more tired, less motivated, less connected. You may not even associate those changes with something as simple as stopping masturbation. But inside your endocrine system, the shift is real. Some men report waking up less often with erections. Others say they no longer feel a spark, even when they want to. Some describe it like a soft fog settling over their thoughts and emotions, subtle but impossible to shake. It's not because something is wrong with you. It's because your body is reacting to the absence of stimulation, the lack of connection with a part of yourself that was once active. Touch, even when done alone and with care, reminds your system that you're still here, that your body still matters, that you haven't quietly shut down the part of yourself that wants, feels, and responds. When men stop completely, many experience what I call the invisible retreat. It's not depression. It's not illness. It's a slow, creeping detachment from pleasure, from motivation, from the hormones that once helped them feel steady and alive. But the good news is this: it's reversible. Even gentle, low-pressure stimulation can begin to reignite your system. This isn't about performance. It's about presence. And for many men, just knowing that they're still capable of feeling, that they're still wired for response, is enough to bring a sense of hope back into their days. You don't need to go back to who you were at 30. You only need to start where you are now. Section 2. Prostate health and the risk of stagnation. The prostate is a small gland, but in the life of an older man, it plays a much larger role than many realize. It's not just a reproductive organ, it's part of your internal rhythm, your health, and your sense of well-being. And when masturbation stops entirely, the prostate often feels the consequences first. You see, when you ejaculate even occasionally, you help clear fluids that naturally build up in the prostate. These fluids aren't just sexual in nature. They carry byproducts, old proteins, and other substances your body is meant to eliminate. But when ejaculation stops completely, that clearance process slows. Over time, these stagnant fluids can lead to discomfort, inflammation, and in some cases, swelling or infection. This condition is known as prostatitis, and while it's common in younger men due to bacterial causes, in older men, it often emerges quietly from inactivity and congestion. Men who no longer masturbate often come to me with complaints of pelvic pressure, frequent urination, or a lingering ache they can't quite explain. Many assume it's just age, or maybe an enlarged prostate. But when I ask how long it's been since they last ejaculated, the answer is often months, maybe years. What they don't realize is that their prostate is like any other part of the body it needs to stay active, to stay healthy. Just as your joints need movement and your muscles need exercise, the prostate benefits from regular function. Masturbation, even without climax every time, helps engage those internal systems. It encourages circulation. It keeps fluids moving. It reminds the body to maintain the health of a gland that still serves you. There's no shame in that. This isn't about indulgence. It's about maintenance. Some men worry they're too old to care about their prostate. But the truth is, problems with this gland can affect everything from your sleep to your bladder to your confidence. A swollen or irritated prostate doesn't just hurt. It interrupts your life in small, frustrating ways. Ways that can steal your comfort, your rest, and your sense of ease. And here's the thing. Staying sexually active doesn't require a partner. It doesn't even require climax. It simply requires attention. Gentle, intentional touch. A willingness to check in with a part of your body that still needs care. Even once or twice a week can make a difference. Not for the sake of sex, but for the sake of health. Your body doesn't need youth to function well. It needs presence, respect, and a steady reminder that every part of you still deserves attention. Section 3. Sleep, mood, and the loss of chemical balance. One of the most subtle but deeply felt changes that happens when an older man stops masturbating is in how he sleeps and how he feels. It may not be obvious at first. You might just notice that you're a little more restless at night, that it takes longer to fall asleep, or that you wake up in the middle of the night with your mind racing over things that didn't used to bother you. You might feel a little more irritable, a little less hopeful, a little more numb. For some men, these changes are so gradual they barely notice them, until one day a friend asks, "Are you okay? You just don't seem like yourself lately." The reason behind this quiet shift has to do with your body's neurochemistry. When you engage in sexual stimulation, your body releases a combination of chemicals that directly affect your nervous system. After orgasm, you get a wave of dopamine, which creates feelings of pleasure and motivation. You also get a boost of oxytocin, the hormone of connection, and serotonin, the mood stabilizer that helps regulate anxiety. Most importantly for sleep, you release prolactin and melatonin hormones that tell your brain, it's time to rest now. You're safe. You can let go. When masturbation stops entirely, those natural chemical cycles get disrupted. Your brain receives fewer signals to release calming hormones. Your body starts to miss the simple act of release that once grounded your system and helped it reset. You might not associate poor sleep with stopping masturbation, but inside your brain, the connection is very real. I've spoken to dozens of older men who reported feeling more anxious, more agitated, or more on edge in the months after they stopped. They weren't unhappy with life. They weren't depressed. But something felt off. Something small but persistent. When I asked them how long it had been since they last had any form of sexual release, many would say, "It's been a while. I guess I just got used to going without." And that's exactly the issue. It's not about the act. It's about what the act supports. Chemical balance, emotional regulation, a sense of inner steadiness. This doesn't mean masturbation is a cure-all for mood or sleep disorders. It's not magic, but it is part of your body's natural rhythm. It's a way of signaling to your system that connection and rest still matter. Some men use meditation. Others walk, breathe deeply, or spend time in prayer. All of those things help. But for many, especially those who live alone, masturbation is not just about release. It's about reconnection with the body, with the breath, with a feeling of being at home within yourself. When that disappears, even if it seems small, something deeper often goes with it. That's why I always encourage my patients not to view masturbation as a guilty habit or something to be left behind with youth, but instead as a quiet tool, a gentle practice that helps the nervous system stay balanced and the spirit stay grounded. Because in your 70s, 80s, or beyond, peace of mind isn't a luxury, it's essential. And sometimes, the simplest path back to it is through your own body. Section 4. Connection, identity, and the cost of silence. There's a part of this conversation that goes beyond biology, beyond chemistry, beyond what your doctor can measure in blood work or see on a scan. It's about connection. Because when an older man stops masturbating, he's not just stepping away from an act. In many cases, he's stepping away from a relationship with his body, with his memories, with the part of himself that still wants to feel, still longs to be touched, even if only by his own hands. For many men, especially those who have lost a partner or are no longer in a sexual relationship, masturbation is not about fantasy. It's about presence. It's about reminding yourself, I am still here. I still matter. I still belong to myself. But when you stop entirely, that thread of connection can slowly fray, and over time, it becomes easier to believe the lie that you are no longer sexual, that your desires are inappropriate, that your identity must shrink to match your age. That's a dangerous lie, because identity is not just about who you were, it's also about who you're allowed to be today, tomorrow, and in the years still ahead. When older men stop engaging with their sexuality altogether, they often begin to feel invisible. Not because anyone said they were, but because something inside them quietly shut down. A sense of playfulness, a sense of vitality, a soft, private kind of hope. The silence doesn't happen all at once. It creeps in. You stop reaching for pleasure. You stop imagining. You stop connecting. And eventually, you stop feeling. That is the true cost. Not the loss of orgasm, but the loss of self. I've worked with men in their 80s who told me they hadn't touched themselves in over a decade. Not because they couldn't, but because they believed they shouldn't. They thought pleasure was for the young, for the partnered, for the healthy. But what they didn't know, what no one had told them, is that pleasure is for the living. And as long as you are alive, you are worthy of it. When they finally returned to their own bodies, not as something to fix or conquer, but as something to respect, they wept. Not from shame, but from relief. Because after all the years of pushing that part of themselves aside, it was still there, quiet, patient, waiting. Masturbation at this stage in life is not about stimulation. It's about remembrance. A gentle way of saying to your body, I haven't forgotten you. I still love the life inside you. You don't need to be young to be intimate with yourself. You don't need a perfect erection. You don't need a fantasy. You only need permission. Permission to feel, to soften, to reconnect with the part of yourself that has nothing to prove and everything still left to experience. This is not about returning to who you were. It's about honoring who you still are. Section 5. Touch as a form of healing and daily self-care. There's something sacred about the human need for touch. And yet, as we grow older, especially as men, we're often told, directly or indirectly, to detach from that need, to become more stoic, less needy, less emotional, less physical. But the truth is, your need for connection through touch doesn't disappear with age. It deepens. It softens. It becomes quieter. Yes, but it never stops being essential. In younger years, touch may have been linked with performance, with desire, with sexual energy. But as the years pass, touch transforms. It becomes something deeper, something healing, something grounding. A way to check in with your body, to say, I see you. I still care about you. I still trust you to carry me. And masturbation, when done with presence, with patience, and without shame, can be a form of that healing touch. It's not about climax. It's not about lust. It's about awareness. It's about saying, this is my body. This is my breath. This is still mine. I once spoke with a man named Elliot. He was 79 years old, recently widowed, and living alone for the first time in over 50 years. He said to me, I miss being touched, not even sexually, just held, cared for. And I didn't realize how much until it was gone. Elliot told me he began developing a nightly ritual, not of sexual indulgence, but of connection. After his evening tea, he would sit quietly in his room, breathe deeply, and place his hands on his chest, his stomach, his legs. Sometimes he would cry, sometimes he would just breathe, and sometimes, yes, he would allow himself gentle self-pleasure, not for release, but for reassurance. It reminds me I'm still here, he said, that I am still a man, that I'm not invisible. Touch, even when done alone, has the power to settle the nervous system. It lowers cortisol, the stress hormone. It increases oxytocin, which promotes calm and trust. It reminds your brain that you are safe, that you belong. And here's what many men never hear. Masturbation can be part of your self-care, just like brushing your teeth, just like taking a walk, just like prayer or meditation. When you create a private space for yourself, free of shame, free of expectation, where the goal is not performance but presence, you give yourself the gift of gentleness, of attention, of healing. For older men, especially those dealing with loneliness, grief, or the loss of physical ability, this kind of ritual can be life-changing. It restores something the world often tries to take away, your sense of being worthy of care. And you don't need to make it a big production. You don't need candles, or music, or anything fancy. You just need a quiet space, a willingness to slow down, and a mindset that says, this matters. I matter. Even 5 minutes a day, even once a week, even once a month. It's not the frequency, it's the feeling. So if you've stopped touching yourself out of guilt, out of fear, or out of some outdated idea that older men shouldn't need that kind of contact, I'm here to tell you, you can begin again. Not because you need to perform, but because you deserve to feel whole. Conclusion. What happens if you stop masturbating in old age? So what really happens when you stop? You may lose more than sensation. You may lose sleep, energy, mood, and balance. You may lose a quiet line of communication between your brain and body. You may slowly disconnect from your sense of vitality, your peace of mind, and your confidence as a man. But none of this is permanent, because your body remembers. It remembers how to feel, how to respond, how to wake back up when invited. And that invitation doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be sexual in the way it once was. It just has to be kind, consistent, willing. You are still a man. You are still whole. You are still worthy of knowing yourself fully, completely, and without apology. So if you've stopped, that's okay. But now you know. Now you understand what it may have cost. And now, if you choose to begin again, you're not just reclaiming pleasure, you're reclaiming presence. And that can change everything. If this message spoke to you, leave a comment and let me know what resonated most. And if you haven't yet subscribed, now is the time. This channel is here to walk beside you with real, practical, honest advice. Because you're not invisible. You're not done. You are still becoming. And if you know a man who needs to hear this, send it to him. You never know how much one quiet conversation might restore a life that was slowly slipping into silence. You deserve truth. You deserve care. And most of all, you deserve to feel alive again.